Hi, I'm Jill Andrews, and this is Experience CTN, where we're going to learn more about CTN's volunteers and producers who have supported community media over the past years. I'm here with Jim Blow. He's the host of Conversation.
Hi, thank you for having me on, Jill.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come and see us. Do you want to get started and talk about your history here at CTN? How did you and your relationship get started?
Well, I've been in one way or another related to conversations or not producing, but being involved in a talk show, let's call it, since, let's see, 1990. And I had been on city council from 1982 to 86. And at that time, the community television programming was really still fairly young. And there had been an effort to get city council members and the mayor and other elected officials sort of on TV once in a while to talk about what's going on. So when I left council in '86, the clerk at the time, Winifred Northcross, the clerk's office, and she became sort of the overseer, let's say, for the community television. And she was interested in putting it sort of back together. So she asked me if I would work with George Saladay, who was another local political figure, to put a show together.
And so, can you talk about what Conversations is about?
It has emerged and evolved over the years as I identify it as sort of a combination of a talk show and information show. When we first began in the 90s, it was almost entirely city council, the mayor, other elected officials, and it was an opportunity to quiz, ask them about issues and topics going on in Ann Arbor. We began with having both a Democrat and a Republican member of council on at the same time, so we try to keep things balanced. Over the 90s into 2000, it slowly sort of evolved, partly because there were fewer and fewer Republicans, also because there were fewer and fewer issues that were, you might say, controversial. And so it became more information of what's going on in the city. And then we expanded from just elected officials to department heads, city administrator, the county, school board, and sort of a larger cross-section of what's going on in the whole community.
So, you said you do both sides, and how do you remain unbiased?
I think the key is when George Saladay and I were first brought in, George, you could say, represented the Democrats, I represented the Republicans. George passed away, but by then it had never evolved into a partisan type show. It was even early on more information, what's going on. And in working with the Democratic members of council, and that in talking with them, never got the sense that they felt I was trying to promote any point of view or challenge any of their points of view. So once again, it just evolved in that sense. It was never really a partisan, try and, only present one side of something.
So, how do you prepare your guests for the show, and how do you prepare?
Well, the guests, there are sort of two groups of guests. There are some that we've had on, as I said, we started in 1990, so after 27 years, there are some guests that we have on almost every year at about the same time. We'll have the superintendent of the public schools on to talk about the upcoming school year. We'll often have the city administrator on to talk about the budget and the budget process. We'll often have elected officials, city council members and that on just after they've come on and talk about what their goals are and why they ran and that type of thing. The county sheriff, the city police chief. So those are regular, and I'm not sure if they necessarily prepare specifically other than it's what's going on, what is involved in their area, and are there specific issues, let's say, that are coming up. And that's where my preparation is more just being aware what's going on in the Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County. It's not always easy to follow the media because you have to sort of track it down at times. But it's also just having your ears and being aware in the community of events and debatable topics, that type of thing. The other group is those that we come on for a specific, you might say, issue. And at times, like recently on the ballot proposal dealing with the special funding for the mental health and policing and that, and sort of explanation of what the voters in this case were being presented with. And so that took a little bit more preparation of having at least a background.
Right. So, can you talk about some of the different subject matters that have come up in the show?
I would say over the last couple of years, I would say there are certain issues that seem to come up on a semi-regular basis. Budget, regardless of whether it's at the city level, the county level, we'll have members from the state legislature on, Congressman, Congresswoman Dingell, both John Dingell and the President, Congresswoman Dingell, Deborah. We'll talk about the budgetary thing. So the finances often over the last, let's say, 15 years have been a topic that gets brought up. And that impact of finances and budgetary concerns on whether it's programs being provided, services, ideas or hopes or dreams of different members of the elected body that wanted to be able to do things but may or may not be able to. And then there are those issues. In a sense, when I was on council, it seemed like every couple of years the airport would come up, or downtown housing, which is an ongoing. The DDA is, been a topic off and on for years, and whether it be a Detroit to Ann Arbor rail line, there was a discussion of Ann Arbor to Howell and Brighton rail line, or up to Whitmore Lake, and all the sort of mass transit issues have come and gone over the years. So some of them are regular, and we just bring in different people because the leaders at times will change.
So why do you think talking about these topics on a show is important?
I think most importantly is to let the people of Ann Arbor and the area just be aware of what's going on. Part of it is the information and the responsibility, I think, of all media, of which community television is a form of media locally, of making sure people have the opportunity to become aware. They may choose not to watch, listen, read, or whatever, a certain aspect of the media, but at least have it out there for them to get information. And I see conversations at the show as a framework to be able to then build on. We're not going to answer all the questions. We're not going to provide all the information, but at least have the community start thinking and talking about what is going on and be aware of things as much as possible, so it doesn't come as a surprise.
Well, we have a clip of your show Conversations, so we'll take a look at that.
Hello, and welcome to Conversations. Thank our viewers for joining us today, and we'll look forward to your continued support here on Conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, so it looks like you have had your fair share of guests on the show.
Right.
So let's talk about a little bit about how the show has evolved from its beginning to now.
Well, when it began in I think it was 1990 in the fall, it was called At Issue. And as I mentioned, George Saladay and I were the sort of hosts. It was too big. I mean, we had the two of us. We had two media members. I believe it was John Hinchy from the Ann Arbor Observer, and I want to say Dave Frickman from WEMU, because that was at a time when they covered every city council meeting, and Hinchy was at every city council meeting. So there were the four of us, and then we would have two members of council, one Democrat, one Republican. So there were six of us trying, and it began as an hour show, partly to give everyone a chance to, when you bring media people and politicians together, getting a word in edgewise at times can be difficult. So it began that way, but fairly quickly the media, you could say, got eliminated. And it became just George Saladay and myself, and then members of council. And we, going way back, used to tape it at the community television studios, which were on the second floor of the fire station right across from City Hall. And so often on a Monday, I'd go over to the council meeting and see who was available to tape the next day type thing. And there were certain members of council who you could say loved and were more than willing to come on a regular basis. Others were more reluctant. But, you know, over the years, that sort of emerged, and when George passed away, it was just myself, and then by then it was usually just one member of council or the mayor, or we'd gotten to the point of department, you could say heads, department chairs, the attorney, the administrator, the parks, had, depending on what issues were coming up. So it was more focused on, you say, what specific issues were being discussed or talked about by council. But it was almost entirely all city, because funding for this comes from the city. And so the focus was what's going on in the city. Over the years, by 2000, we began to look beyond just city to county, and whenever possible, getting the elected officials at the state level. And whether it be the Congress people or state legislators have been more than happy to join us whenever they're around. And so often they're scheduled during whether it be the holiday season when they are on break, or other breaks when we can get them brought in. And as I said, there are some that come, you say, every year. Some I won't say have to drag, but most politicians are more than willing to talk.
So you said that you started out with two hosts?
Two hosts, George and I, and two media people who generally asked most of the questions. And then usually it was two members of council, because we had to keep things balanced. And it was, at that time, it varied between 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans, or vice versa. And then slowly in the 90s, it became fewer and fewer Republicans. And then, now we essentially just have one. And the other shift is that as community television has grown and new programming has come along, there's Ward Talk, and there's other opportunities for members of the council to get in front of their constituents. And so we do less and less on conversations of bringing them on, and bring in more the people who don't have, you could say, a ready network to get their information out. And so much of what impacts the people, the residents of Ann Arbor, it's not just the elected officials, but it's what's going on in the planning and development department, what's going on in sanitation, what's going on in recycling, whatever they might be. And so it became more and more important to bring those people into the discussion.
Those are all very important topics, and I'm very pleased that you actually give people an opportunity that are not necessarily always presented with that opportunity.
And the people here at community television are the ones who really contact, for the most part, the people. And sometimes they'll contact us and say they want to come on because there's an issue coming forward that they want to make sure the people are aware of. And it's not always just by a ballot proposal or something, but just be aware of changes in how something might be done, and to make sure that there's that communication again on making sure the public is aware.
So let's talk about your current situation and who you work with most here at CTN. Let's talk about Rob.
Rob Cross has been the director, producer, different titles, I'm not always sure. Golly, I'm not sure if it's been the full set 27 years, but if not, the vast majority of it. And first of all, he makes it very easy as a show to do it. I don't have to worry about anything related to the actual production of the show, either getting volunteers to run cameras or anything like that. And in many ways, over the years, the show itself has been almost a training ground, that when there were many interns, this would be a show, because it's produced by, in many cases, the community television network. So Conversations is a sort of in-house type of a programming. So it gave a chance for interns to learn different things. I seldom, after we left the fire station, have had to worry about trying to get guests myself. He arranges all of that. And that has not only reduced, you could say, concern for me, but it also, as long as I'm available, we usually tape it on Tuesdays, but it will vary because when you're dealing with elected officials, they're not always available on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock. So we have to adjust in that. And he coordinates all that because he knows when he has people to work the cameras and when he has people to work sound and all of that. So he's been helpful in that sense.
So, do you have any memorable moments from your past?
Well, let's see. Going back once again to the fire station, we did have a light fixture fall in the middle of the taping once. We have had lights go out, but that's, I wouldn't say normal, but it's not unusual. I think I mentioned to you beforehand, there's only really been one show in my memory that I felt we had to struggle to get the person to really sort of answer questions. Their responses were more yes, no. And this was not an elected official, because most elected officials, if you ask them a question, it's difficult to get them to stop talking. But sometimes when you have department heads or people who are not accustomed to talking with, you could say, a sort of in a more public sense, it was a little bit of stretching to get them out. Every once in a while, there are some topics that are tough to sort of get a half hour out of. We did the head of the, I want to say, sanitation department for the city once, and I'm not sure how many questions I could come up with on, cleaning water and taking care of sewage. But somehow we got, I think, at least 25 minutes out of it, because it's a 30-minute show. We cut it down from an hour fairly early. And there have only been once or twice that I got the sense that the guest was not really pleased with either the questioning or the way the discussion went. Because, I believe it should be a friendly conversation, and so it's not, the goal is not to embarrass them. The goal is not to try and make it tough on them. There are some issues that we will ask questions about which they may or may not like, but I'm not going to challenge them necessarily on whether their opinions are right or wrong. But just present it that, this is what they see and they support.
So what can people, your audience, expect in the future episodes of Conversations?
I think two things. One is consistency. I think we've gotten to the point where, whether it be the sheriff of Washtenaw County, whether it be the fire chief for Ann Arbor, that on a semi-regular basis, certain people and positions will get brought to the people for them to get an update on what's going on. And then also an opportunity, if they want to do any additional follow-up, to who to contact and that type of thing. The other area that I think that the viewers can expect and see coming up is addressing those issues or topics in a timely fashion. To be perfectly honest, Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County is a fairly secure, safe community as far as issues and topics. There are not a lot of real controversial things. You get to create them almost. And so, it's not like we're going to avoid anything. But if they have an issue or a topic that they want, contact Community Television Network, let us know what maybe that we haven't covered that they're interested in seeing us covered.
Well, I really want to thank you for coming on and taking the time to talk about your show and the experience that you've had with CTN. So that's about all the time we have here.
Well, thank you, Jill. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the future episodes. In the meantime, why not come in and experience all we have to offer? Visit us online at a2gov.org/CTN. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at CTN Ann Arbor. I want to thank our crew, Robert Horn, Rich Musow, Mike Koski, Jamie Chu, and Alicia May. And I am your host, Jill Andrews. I'll see you next time.